Alright, let's dive in. Midterms are finally over, and our protagonist Ian Perkus couldn't be happier. He survived another brutal round at the academy. But while he's out celebrating, his friend Seline H. gives him a reality check. The battle isn't over yet. One wrong move and he could still get kicked out. Leto, ever the realist, jokes that Ian's future is probably just being a low-ranking city guard. But Ian doesn't even care. He scraped by with his footwork and horse riding skills, even if his sword game is seriously weak. The celebration winds down, and Ian stumbles back to his dorm, swearing off morning classes forever. But as soon as he falls into a deep sleep, a chilling vision hits him. An ominous voice whispers Delurum is coming, he must be stopped. Jolted awake and covered in a cold sweat, Ian just brushes it off as a crazy drunken nightmare. But then he spots an unfamiliar letter on his desk. And trust me, this is where things get really weird. The letter is written in elegant handwriting by someone named CIA. It talks about fiance hunts, demonic beasts, and a dream they both shared across time. The date on it: a totally different year, one that doesn't even exist yet. And at the bottom, a chilling warning: if they fail to protect the future, the entire world will end. Ian calls it a ridiculous prank, crushing the paper in his hand. But as he's rushing off to class, one weird thought sticks with him. Who would bother writing him a love letter? A few moments later, he's walking through the academy, and he hears students whispering all around him. They're warning each other not to make eye contact. Apparently, he'll try to talk to them and ask if he's the crazy one from the rumors. He feels everyone staring and wonders why the heck he has an axe on his hip. The realization hits him hard, and he has no idea what is going on. Then he spots Leto and Seline and calls out to them, which completely shocks them both. But they immediately turn their backs, pretending they didn't even see him. Now you and I both know something's not right here. Leto whispers to Seline to just ignore him, pretend she doesn't know him. She quickly agrees, adding that she doesn't want to get dragged off to some strange place again. That's when Ian snaps, shouting at them, asking if they're even listening. Leto is stunned to hear him speak like that, but then he suddenly notices something. He stares Ian down, scanning him from head to toe, and mutters that something about him feels different from yesterday. Frustrated, Ian yells that he isn't in the mood for jokes. But before he can finish, Leto rushes forward and pulls him into a hug, with actual tears in his eyes. Leto cries out that the evil spirit that was possessing him is finally gone. Ian shoves him away, telling him to stop being gross and demanding to know what's happening. Leto tells him something strange had possessed him for the past week. Shocked, Ian asks if he heard that right, a whole week. He tells them the last thing he remembers was saying goodbye to them last night. Seline, now absolutely furious, asks if he truly doesn't remember any of it. She reminds him that he's been treating them like his personal servants for an entire week, completely trashing their reputations. Leto adds they would have dragged him to an exorcist if he hadn't threatened them with an axe. Ian grabs the axe at his waist, asking if this is the one they're talking about. Seline immediately flinches, telling him to get it away from her, saying it's giving her traumatic flashbacks. Completely lost, Ian tries to process everything he just heard. And let's be real, you and I are just as confused. Had he really been possessed by some evil spirit? Because as far as he can recall, nothing happened at all. Wondering if any dangerous places or objects were the cause of this mess. Leto tells him he's just glad the spirit is gone now. And Seline adds she's thankful it disappeared without another incident. Confused, he asks them what they're talking about. What incident did he do something? Seline just says. He did something insane. He beat the second year's top student. The moment he hears that, one name pops into his head, the youngest aura expert. A prodigy they call the monster swordswoman of the second years. Seria Ordina, stuttering, he asks if they're seriously telling him that he beat a monster like her. He thinks they have to be messing with him. But Seline just asks why he's so shocked, reminding him he put her in the hospital. For an entire week, stunned, he yells that there's no way that happened. What kind of evil spirit could possibly possess him to do something like that? But Seline just shrugs, saying they don't know either. All she wants to know is what he plans to do now. He has no idea what she means, so she clarifies. She's talking about his swordsmanship rematch against Seria, today, a week ago. Seria Ordina was on her knees crawling for her dropped sword. She struggles to her feet, muttering that this is unbelievable. Before he couldn't last 10 seconds against her, now he's totally dominating. But Ian just scoffs, saying the only unbelievable thing is her pathetic swordsmanship. And just watch this, he slashes her across the face with his wooden sword. The blow sends her flying backwards, slamming hard onto the floor. She tries to get up again, but he's on her in an instant, striking from behind. The watching students are in total disbelief, murmuring amongst themselves. Wasn't Seria basically undefeated, even against fourth-year students? They can't believe Ian just won against a monster like her. Ian walks over to the fallen Seria, asking if she isn't even a little suspicious. He tells her she fell for every single opening he showed her, not realizing it was all a trap. He raises his sword one last time, ending the fight with absolute ease. Back in the present, Ian wonders why he had to fight someone from his own class. It would have been one thing if it was someone he could actually handle. But no, it had to be the Academy's so-called unbeatable prodigy, Seria Ordina. Seline yells at him from the sidelines, telling him to just give up now. Just surrender while he still has the chance. Meanwhile, the other students are whispering about how persistent Seria is for demanding this rematch. They can't believe she won't accept her miserable defeat from last week. Seria overhears them saying the professors always covered for her because she was strong. But now they bet her pride is completely shattered. Some admit they'd be too ashamed to show up. The professor finally screams for silence from the crowd. He announces the official start of the match. He reminds them this will substitute for their class, meaning the results will affect their grades. Ian just curses the evil spirit that put him in this mess. He complains that it should have at least cleaned up after itself before it left. But no, it just did whatever it wanted and left him holding the bag. Let's dive in. Our guy is left wondering what the hell he was supposed to do. He knows Seria is the top student, so losing a few marks won't hurt her. But if he fails this class, he'll end up a shut-in living with his parents. Taking a deep breath, he calms down. The plan is simple. Just hold out until Seria is satisfied. 10 minutes should be enough, right? Wrong, he's immediately shocked when she appears right in front of him. In the next second, she slashes, sending him flying and slamming him to the floor. In that instant, he realizes something we all saw coming. There's no way in hell. 10 minutes, he'd be in the hospital in 60 seconds at this rate. Still, he knows if he gives up now, Seria will never accept it. He has to hold on. Determined, he stands and asks if it's his turn. Seria just tells him to do whatever he wants, without a single hesitation. He dashes forward, jumps, and swings his sword right at her. But he's surprised. His body is moving with this strange, unnatural ease. It feels incredibly light, making him wonder what on earth happened. During that time, he can't remember. His body is responding exactly how he wants. As his blade nears Seria, she just smiles, then disappears in a flash. Reappearing at his side, she effortlessly disarms him, knocking his sword away. The next moment, a slash from the front sends him crashing to the floor again. For a split second, he thinks there has to be a way out of this. But let's be real, it's impossible. Seria just stares down at him. She asks if he showed her that opening on purpose. Then she reminds him how, just last week, he brushed her aside so easily. Like he was just toying with her, he angrily screams at her to stop talking. Stop talking about last week. He swears he'll lose his mind if he hears it again. But she just screams back, demanding to know whose fault it was she became a joke. Without hesitation, she leaps at him, ready to strike him down. He immediately raises his sword, confirming it. His kinetic vision is way better. His reaction speed has improved, but it was all a trap. She easily pivots and slashes him again, sending him flying into the stage corner. He sees her attack from the side, then from below, and then from the front. But he knows that what he's seeing isn't the whole story. It's actually one continuous assault, and somehow he's actually keeping up. He starts to wonder why she's making so many unnecessary moves. Then she quotes him from last week, "Don't charge in just because you see an opening." She adds that you have to assume it's a trap, reminding him he said that. He was the one who taught her that lesson, and that's why she wanted this rematch. Meanwhile, he's on his last legs, just trying to catch his breath. She rushes toward him, shouting if it isn't about time he got serious. And suddenly he understands, yeah, his own strength has grown for sure. And that's when it hits him and us. Seria isn't the same person from last time. Thanks to the words he said to her, she's evolved. Seria dodges his slash and blocks his next attack with perfect timing. He manages to block her attacks too, as she keeps pushing forward. He thinks to himself that he's fought her evenly for long enough, maybe he can quit. But Seria wasn't about to let him talk. She raised her sword, ready for a real fight. Now that he was finally serious, it was her turn to show him what she was made of. She charged forward, but he didn't even flinch, just watching her attack get closer. He takes the hit on purpose, slamming hard onto the floor. The professor declares that if Ian doesn't surrender in 5 seconds, Seria wins. Lying there, he thinks about how this possession and duel have been the craziest things to ever happen in his entire life. As the countdown begins, Ian tells himself he's done enough to make things right. It was time to just go back to being a normal person. But then Seria speaks up, asking if he just took that hit on purpose. And you and I both know she's not gonna let him off that easy. She tells him not to think he can just end things like this, leaving him stunned. If he quits now, she'll just demand another duel, even if he skips class or tries to hide. She'll hunt him down until he feels the same humiliation she did. Furious, he grabs his sword and gets back on his feet. He's going through absolute hell right now for something he can't even remember. He wonders if Seria is really treating him like her mortal enemy, just because he messed with her for a single week. The professor tells him if he wants to back out, now's the time. He asks if he wants to stop, but Ian says he can still fight. The ref agrees and the duel is back on. Seria praises him for getting up. She smirks, saying they can't just let it end like that. He smiles back, there's no running now, and trust me, this is where it gets good. He swears to himself he's going to tear her stubborn pride to shreds all over again. During their last clash, he'd clearly seen the path of her blade. He'd dodged it easily, making him realize something important. All he has to do is focus. Glaring at her, he vows to utterly crush her spirit. As she rushes in to attack, he calmly watches her sword approach. He's surprised to find he can see its path perfectly, timing her every swing. She leaps into the air, launching a massive downward strike at him. But just as the sword is about to land, he catches the blade with his bare hand. His golden eyes burn with a terrifying intensity as he tells her he caught it. Effortlessly, he throws her sword aside, sending her stumbling to her knees. Raising his own weapon, he declares that the match is over. She can't believe it. Instinctively, she covers her head, trembling in pure fear, which makes him pause. He hesitates, is this really the right way to settle this? Does he really need to go this far over something from a week ago? He knew this wouldn't actually solve a single thing. In fact, the same exact situation would just keep happening again. He steps toward her, finally understanding it's not about winning. Instead of striking her, he just flicks her on the forehead. She lets out a yelp. The entire crowd just gasps, completely shocked by what they just saw. Seria demands to know what the hell he's doing, accusing him of mocking her. But he just ignores her, asking why she's trying so hard to win against him. And clenching her teeth, she screams that winning is everything. What a cliffhanger. That if she lost, she'd be a laughingstock, but he just smiles calmly. He asks if what other people think is really that important. Losing one match won't suddenly change who she is. No matter what they say, all the effort she poured into her swordsmanship. That doesn't just vanish because of a single defeat. She stammers, reluctantly agreeing with him, but she's still not convinced. He keeps going, admitting that, yeah, being mocked hurts. But if everything she's worked for becomes meaningless just because of one loss, well, that's just not fair. She nods, finally getting it. He then tells her that he lost all the time at the academy, so she should trust him. There's no point in taking people's selfish words to heart. Even if she loses and everyone laughs, deep down, nothing actually changes. She knows he's right. It hits her that she'd somehow convinced herself that her swordsmanship was worthless, the very thing she built with her own blood, sweat, and tears. With new clarity, she calmly admits she's learned a lot and thanks him for the lesson. The crowd is baffled. Seline asks if this means Ian actually won, while others just murmur. He's now beaten the second year's top student twice. Some are wondering just who the hell this guy really is. Meanwhile, the professor is just happy Ian and Seria made up, and officially names Ian the winner. Ian steps off the stage as Seria watches him go silent. She makes a promise to herself. From this day on, she walks her own path no matter what. Now stick with me here because days later, Ian learns that things don't always turn out the way you want. As he walks through the academy, he hears the whispers. Students are calling him the rumored Ian Perkus. They speculate if he's the demon who nearly killed Seria in their first match, then forced her to surrender in the second. And that just ticks him off. He knows he only won because Seria wasn't even using her full power. It's not because he was actually strong. Still, he has to admit his aura detection and mana control have leveled up big time. But even with all of Seria's wasted movements, if his own skills were worse than hers, he never would have won. Okay, I know what you're thinking. That thought just makes him wonder again, what in the world happened to him during that week he can't remember. Suddenly, a tap on his shoulder. A voice asks if he's trying to recall that missing week. He turns around to see Seline and Leto. He sighs, admitting that in the end, he still has no clue why he was possessed. Seline tells him she's sure he's fine because the saintess at the cathedral said so. But he's not so sure, reminding them about all the weird rumors spreading about him. She just brushes it off, who cares about some stupid rumors. Besides, they aren't even bad ones. Before all this, he was looked down on as just some low-ranking noble, but that's definitely not the case anymore. And you know what really pisses her off? When people say he has a nice face but isn't attractive because he's just some countryside noble. Yeah, she actually said that. He replies that it still means they like him, but before he can even finish, stomps right on his foot, making him scream in pain as she tells him that thanks to him, even the high-ranking nobles have stopped giving them trouble. They're all scared he might literally crush them. Leto then asks if the rumor is true. A confused Ian asks which rumor, reminding them that there have been a lot of stories going around about him lately. Leto clarifies, saying people are talking about Seria following him around ever since that day. Seline immediately gets angry, demanding to know if Seria is actually stalking him. He just tells them to look to the side but not to make it obvious, so they all glance over. And there she is, Seria hiding behind a tree, wearing a mask and blushing as she stares at him. Seline is fuming, asking if Seria seriously thinks that disguise actually works. She then screams at Seria, demanding to know why she's following Ian around, and if she's already forgotten getting beaten half to death by him. Ian and Leto do their best to hold Seline back, as Leto asks when this whole stalking thing even started. Ian sighs and replies that it's been going on for about 5 days. And it's so annoying he feels like he's about to lose his mind. Leto quickly drags Seline away, telling Ian to deal with this before she explodes. Ian reluctantly agrees. On the other hand, Seria is totally panicking, wondering what on earth she should do. She has to ask him and soon. But before she can think, she's startled when he calls out to her from right behind. He says he noticed she's been following him and asks if there was something she wanted to talk about. She rips off her mask in total shock, asking how he managed to see through her amazing disguise. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, she really believed that would work. Stammering, she shyly tells him she wants to ask for his guidance because she wants to become stronger. He blushes a little, realizing Seria has become way more polite compared to last week, but he still wonders what he could even possibly teach her. I mean, if they were talking about morals, sure, but swordsmanship. There is absolutely nothing he can teach someone who's already stronger than him. More importantly, he finally got his normal life back. And he has zero intention of getting tangled up with her ever again. He apologizes but says he's going to have to refuse. Her expression just falls as she reminds him that he already beat her twice. He explains that it had nothing to do with his skill. She just let her guard down, that's all. As he turns to leave, he tells her the only reason he won was pure luck. But she insists that luck is a skill too. If he can't help her long-term, then he should at least do it until the hunting festival. Ian freezes at the mention of the hunting festival. Don't blink now because this is where it gets serious. That year there had been several accidents during the festival, like Emma from the alchemy department, who went to gather some herbs only to be attacked by a mysterious monster, and was found with her stomach ripped wide open. Seria hesitates before continuing, saying that there's no real reason for him to help her. But before she can even finish, he suddenly thanks her, a light bulb going off in his head. He's just remembered something critical. He turns and walks away, leaving her completely surprised and confused. As he leaves, he simply tells her that if she wants to get stronger, she should go ask Professor Derek for help instead. And just like that, our boy is out. Seline sees Ian bolting, and Leto asks where he's suddenly off to, wondering if he finally settled things with Seria. But Ian just says he hasn't, explaining he just remembered something urgent he had to do and that he'd catch them later. He might not believe everything in that letter. But one part of it he couldn't ignore, his friend's name was mentioned. Trust me, we need to see what this is about. He decides to check on her in person, wasting zero time as he heads straight for the alchemy department, positive that Emma would have some answers for him. Meanwhile, over at the training grounds, Seria is catching her breath. Swinging her sword over and over again, Professor Dirk watches her, telling her that's good enough for today. She's almost there. He explains that as long as she keeps up this pace, she should form a solid aura by the time the hunting festival arrives. Seria thanks him and he just laughs, admitting he never thought she'd be the one to ask him for extra training. She gets excited, telling him Ian was the one who told her to seek him out, which completely confuses Dirk. Then something clicks, Seria snaps back to reality. Now watch this moment carefully. She calms herself and tells Dirk she'll be taking her leave, since it seems like he doesn't have anything else to teach her for now. Dirk just smirks, thinking to himself that Seria still has zero social skills, and tells her he'll see her in the next class. She just nods and walks off. The next day, Dirk finds Seria again, telling her there's no need to rush her training. He mentions that even that guy only managed to get second place in the festival during his second year. Seria retorts that it's weird for a professor to tell her not to push herself when she's just trying to get her grades up. So Dirk offers her a hint, since this is her first hunting festival. He advises her to get familiar with the layout and monsters of the southern forest, because that's the location of the event. He's sure the upperclassmen have already started scouting it out. Seria asks if there are any strong monsters there. Dirk explains that near the entrance, not really. But once you get about halfway into the forest, you'll start running into much more powerful beasts. She takes his words to heart, saying she'll try to go deeper next time, but Dirk immediately warns her not to go too far by herself. He explains that while most students can handle the monsters, the records show that as the hunting festival gets closer, the really nasty ones start appearing way more often. Okay, pause for a sec. What you're about to hear is the deep lore of this world. The heavenly god Ours was born from light, while the evil god Oz was born from darkness. With the flow of time, the heavenly god created the universe, setting the law that time always moves forward. If that law was ever broken, the world would be thrown into chaos. To protect that order, the heavenly god placed several major restrictions on time. So if any being could actually defy that order, they would have to be an enemy of the heavenly god, an impossibly powerful existence, like Delim. Emma, a student from the alchemy department, leans back and asks Ian if he finally gets it now. He just sighs and admits he doesn't understand a single thing. Emma lets out a huge yawn, reminding him that he's the one who woke her up even though she'd been pulling an all-nighter. And you and I both know that's a terrible idea. He kicks the door open after ignoring her for a month straight, and then has the nerve to say something dumb like he was glad she was okay. She fires back that he desperately needs some common sense, telling him how he loses track of everything the second he gets focused on something. Ian tries defending himself, asking for a little slack and reminding her that they're supposed to be friends. But Emma just scoffs. What kind of friend only shows up when they need a favor? Feeling the guilt hit, he apologizes. He admits he knew he woke her up, but then notices she seems even angrier than usual and asks if she's being a little too hard on him. Apologizing again, he asks if she can explain everything a bit more simply. Emma just cracks a smile at how flustered he is, saying at least he knows how to say sorry. Relenting, she agrees to quickly summarize it for him. First, she asks if he agrees that defying time itself would require an absolutely immense amount of power. Ian just nods along. And here's where it gets wild. She explains there's only one being with that kind of strength, Delim. The servant of the evil god. Ian's eyes go wide as he asks if she means that the letters he got were actually sent by Delim himself. Emma falls dead silent, staring at him in total disbelief before telling him he seriously needs to get some common sense. Frustrated, he yells back that she was the one who brought him up in the first place. Sighing, she admits that if she had to name someone it would be Delim, but still. How could a mythical being, one that might not even be real, pull off something like this? Ian, still lost in thought, then asks what if it was the evil god's doing. Emma just shrugs, replying that they don't even know if the evil god is real either. Ian gives an awkward laugh. Yeah, she has a point. Emma grabs a potion, telling him that either way, getting a letter from the future is impossible. She tells him to go back to his room and sleep it off. Ian wonders if she's being a bit too harsh, treating him like a complete moron just for suggesting something crazy. Then again, he supposes he's the real crazy one for actually believing he received a letter from his future self. Suddenly, Emma remembers something. There was one thing she wanted to give him. She pulls out 2 potions and Ian immediately asks what they are. She explains they're presence-erasing potions, a new product she's been developing, and asks him to test one out for her. Curious, Ian grabs a bottle and asks if drinking it will turn him invisible. Emma clarifies it won't make him invisible, just erase his presence entirely. Without a second thought, he uncorks the bottle and chugs the entire thing down. Emma absolutely loses it, shouting and demanding to know what he thinks he's doing. After swallowing, he makes a face and complains that it tastes awful. Furious, she screams at him for drinking such a valuable potion so recklessly. Then, without warning, she clocks him one. Sporting a new black eye, he asks if all he needs to do is just check if the potion is working or not. He suggests she close her eyes for a second while he goes and hides. Annoyed but intrigued, Emma agrees. More test data is always useful. You and I both know what's coming next. She closes her eyes and the potion kicks in. Ian is stunned, realizing he can't even feel his own presence in the world. It's like he's become a ghost. Excited, he playfully waves his hand right in front of Emma. Stick with me. If he can stay quiet while using this, it's a total game changer. This would give him an insane advantage in the hunting festival, but just before he can celebrate, Emma's hand shoots out of nowhere and grabs his clothes. Instantly, the potion's effect vanishes. Ian stammers, completely in shock. He asks how she possibly found him. She lets go, sending him crashing to the floor. Without missing a beat, she just tells him it's a no-go. Ian is still totally lost. He asks what she means and why it failed. Her answer is brutally blunt. It was because of his body odor. Mortified, he asks her to explain. Emma tells him everyone has a unique scent that they themselves can't even notice. It was a blind spot she never considered when she tested the potion only on herself. Still bright red with embarrassment, Ian bolts for the door, wishing her good luck. As he leaves, he mutters to himself, wondering why he'd even been worried about her. She's already insanely strong on her own. Emma calls out after him. He tells her now that he knows she's okay, he's heading out. He's going to drink the other test tube out in the forest and report back to her later. But before he leaves, she stops him, suddenly remembering something important. She warns him not to go into the forest alone until after the hunting festival. And if he absolutely has to, she insists he call her first. Now pay attention here, she reminds him the monsters have been acting strangely lately. Then she gives a sly smile, adding that this is the perfect time to put him to use. Ian just sighs and agrees. Since he's free, she can put him to work later. Back in his dorm room, Ian finds another one of those messages sitting on his desk. Frustrated, he crumples it up, angrily demanding who the hell keeps sending these things. Lying on his bed, he reassures himself that Emma will be fine. He just warned her not to go out by herself after all. But before he can even relax, Leto bursts into his room, absolutely furious. He demands to know where Ian ran off to, complaining that he got stuck calming Seline down. Ian sits up and asks Leto if it was him who sent the letters. He grumbles that Emma made fun of him for a solid 10 minutes because of them. Leto is completely lost. What letters did he go see Emma and how is she? Ian decides to just let it go, figuring Leto somehow managed to handle things okay. For once, annoyed, he suddenly snaps at Leto, shouting at him. He yells at him to never bring up someone dying again because it was way too much. Leto is completely blindsided, staring at him in shock before shouting right back. He reminds Ian all he asked was how Emma was doing. He's making no sense. Why is Ian suddenly talking nonsense? Meanwhile, in the trash can, the note sits. Its contents, you and I both know we have to see this. It starts with Emma. While gathering medicinal herbs, she was suddenly attacked by an unknown monster and was later found with her stomach completely ripped open. Leto asks again, "How is Emma?" Without hesitating, Ian replies that she's totally fine. How could she not be? But in that moment, he has no idea what's really happening. That she is already in the forest, her stomach torn open, the next day at the church. Emma lies in bed, clinging to life as the saintess tries to heal her. Alright, let's jump right into this heavy scene. By Emma's side, Ian and Leto are kneeling, praying with the saintess. When she finishes, she turns to them, explaining Emma was discovered at the entrance of the forest. According to the scouts, it was definitely the work of a monster. But monsters rarely show up in that area, which means Emma must have let her guard down. Still, there was one saving grace, a potion that made her appear dead. After she was wounded, that clever trick is what ultimately saved her life. Ian, desperate, begs the saintess, "With your divine power you can save her, right?" But she calmly explains that divine power isn't some all-powerful cheat code. However, if they could provide an offering of great value, they might just be able to perform a miracle. Frustrated, Ian's anger flares up. He reminds her an herbalist's daughter doesn't have priceless treasures. How could she possibly have access to something so valuable? The saintess, completely unfazed, clarifies it's not about money. It's about how difficult the offering is to obtain, but even so, she tells them to prepare themselves for the absolute worst. And then she tells them Emma's father will be arriving any minute. She offers them an out. If breaking the news is too hard, the clergy can handle it. Ian refuses. He insists on staying, saying he was the last person to see her. He feels he has to be the one to tell her father what happened. It might be their last chance to speak. The saintess just tells him it's no one's fault. She urges him not to blame himself, then leaves them to regain her composure. The moment she's gone, Leto is overcome with pure rage and slams his fist into the wall. He screams, demanding to know why a monster was at the forest entrance of all places. He cries out that if it hadn't been there, Emma could have gotten away. Ian is about to try and calm him down when they both hear a broken voice. And you and I both know what's coming next. Turning around, Ian sees an old man sobbing his daughter's name. The sight just makes his heart sink into his stomach. He hesitantly asks if he's Emma's father. The man, barely holding himself together, looks up and asks if Ian knew her. Emma's father then collapses to his knees, begging Ian to help them. All he wants is to see her face one last time, but the priests refuse for safety reasons. There's nothing Ian can do. He clenches his fists, helpless. He thinks if only they had power, if only they had the money for that miracle offering. Maybe they could have done something, but for countryside nobles like them, all they can do is tell her father the priests are trying their best. After Emma's father calms down just a little bit, Ian pulls out a potion, explaining that Emma had given it to him just yesterday. It was a new recipe. She was incredibly proud of developing herself. He says her father should be the one to hold on to this piece of her, not him. But Emma's father refuses. Instead, he grabs Ian's shoulder and begs him to use it. In exchange, he pleads with him to never ever forget Emma. Ian just stands there asking himself if this is really it. And trust me, this is the moment that changes everything for our main character. He realizes this all could have been prevented if he'd just taken that letter more seriously. If only he had given Emma a much clearer warning before he left. He doesn't know if the letter was real or from the future, but one thing is certain. He can't afford to ignore it any longer. He makes a decision. He will find Sepia, the one who wrote the letters, and stop the events inside them from ever happening. The next day, Leto hits him with a puzzled look, asking who this Sepia is. He teases Ian, asking if he finally landed a girlfriend, adding that he never thought he'd live to see the day Ian actually showed interest in a woman. Annoyed, Ian shoves his friend's face away and tells him to stop messing around. He reminds Leto that he needs to find the person who sent him the letters. So did he check the student registry? Ian says yes, but there's no record of anyone named Sepia. Leto jokes that the name is probably fake, wondering what kind of woman is making Ian this worked up. Irritated, Ian shouts back that it's nothing like that. And there's no reason for him to be anxious. He's just frustrated, saying there's something he needs to ask her. But of course, Leto keeps teasing, asking if Ian plans on asking her to be his girlfriend. That earns him a solid smack. After getting hit, Leto finally agrees to stop, and instead asks if he's right that sepia is the name of a flower. Ian confirms it. That's exactly why he's not sure if it's a real name or just a clever alias. Leto speculates that it's probably a nickname, one related to the sepia flower. And he mentions the name is actually pretty common up north, suggesting she might be from that region. Now watch this, hearing that something suddenly clicks in Ian's head. The north, isn't that Yura family territory? Leto offers to ask around, but says if Ian is talking about someone from the north, only one person comes to mind. Turning, Leto gestures over his shoulder, pointing out that Ian's biggest fan is standing right over there. Ian follows his gaze and sees Seria. She's hiding behind a tree, staring straight at him. Ian admits Seria was the first person he thought of too when the north was mentioned. Leto points out the only noble family he knows from that snow-covered region is the Yura's family. Still, Leto doesn't get why Seria would send a letter with a fake name instead of just talking to him. Fed up, Ian tells him to get lost. All right, we've all been waiting for this. Ian approaches Seria, but before he can speak, she hands him a bag. She explains it's compensation for teaching her. When Ian opens it, he's floored. It's a huge pile of gold. Completely bewildered, he asks what she could possibly mean by compensation. Knowing this gold is worth way more than some simple advice, Seria explains that after asking for his help before, she realized it was bad manners not to offer something in return. Ian quickly reassures her that it wasn't rude at all, insisting there is no way he can accept this much money. Curious, he asks her why she's so desperate to learn from him. Seria replies that she doesn't think she has anything left to learn from anybody else. For a second, Ian thinks she's matured. But then he realizes this is probably an act she only puts on for him. Seria continues, saying there's always something to learn from people who you have yet to surpass. Ian reminds her he doesn't have the skills to teach someone at her level, and asks if she isn't already improving well on her own. He adds that even without his help, he's sure she'll reach even greater heights someday. But Seria simply says that if she... Now get this, if she missed this year's hunting festival, there would be no second chances. That's when Ian remembers the letter said Sepia was also participating. So before Seria can even finish speaking, he grabs her, looks her dead in the eye, and declares they're training together. He is determined to find out if she really is Sepia. Days later, their training starts. But even after intense sessions, he still can't confirm if she's the one. He does learn a few other things about her though. First, Seria has zero social skills. She earned the nickname Rude Yura, not because she's malicious or anything. She's just plain awful at interacting with people. Second, Seria doesn't understand rest. Ian had heard that high-ranking nobles often train themselves to the breaking point, just relying on healing potions to keep going. He quickly realized Seria was one of them. One day, she gets a pretty nasty injury during their training session. Ian immediately asks if she's all right, but she just waves it off. A single potion will heal it, she says, but Ian grabs her injured leg. Now watch this, he asks if she really thinks potions are some magic cure-all. He explains that they don't do anything for the deep fatigue and tension in her joints. That's why proper pacing is critical. Then he recalls something she said earlier. He asks if it's true that this year really is her last chance. He needs to understand exactly what she meant and why it's causing her so much stress. Seria hesitates, then admits there's someone in the fourth year she needs to beat. Ian points out that just because they're graduating doesn't mean it's over. She could always find them again later, challenge them to a proper match. He says this as he finishes wrapping the bandage on her leg. Seria quietly replies that the more time passes, the fewer chances she'll have. Confused, Ian asks what she means by that. Seria takes a deep breath. She explains that if she were to challenge the head of her own family, she would be exiled. Instantly, and yeah, I know what you're thinking, did he hear that right? Oh, he did. Seria confirms she wants to fight the future head of her house. The #1 student of the fourth-year swordsmanship department, Deline Yura. And then she drops the real bomb. Deline is her half-sister set to lead the family. As soon as she graduates, she's in charge. Looking at Ian, Seria asks him if he was serious when he said she would still have a chance to challenge Deline. Ian confirms it, but Seria just shakes her head, saying it's not possible. She explains that the academy is the only place in the world where a direct heir and a branch family member can be judged on equal footing. She flashes back to lying defeated on the ground, thinking the rule change was unfair. But Deline had just walked up to her with a smirk and condescendingly praised her for fighting, even though she couldn't make any allies. She reminded Seria that gathering people to your side is a skill in itself. Seria had to just take it. She knew everyone in the Yura family was on her sister's side. There was no way she could win any of them over to her cause. But deep down, all she wanted were allies of her own. She's lost in that thought when Ian tells her the bandage is done and that she should be able to move now. Blushing, she just stares at him and a new thought forms: if he were her ally, they could win. And right then and there, you and I both know she's decided she's going to ask him. All right, let's dive into the hunting festival, a treasured event at Imperial Edelis Academy. This wasn't just any competition. It was a test to see who could hunt the most powerful magical beasts. The southern forest where the festival was held was basically a nature preserve for these creatures. The beasts were left completely untouched all year round. But Ian had two things weighing on his mind: Seria, who had to join the festival, and Sepia, who he was supposed to get close with during this very event. He had no idea what either of them really had to do with him, but he couldn't shake the feeling. It just kept nagging at him in the back of his mind. Just then, Seline comes running up to the hunting grounds, yelling his name. She insists they have to go together, but he's confused by her rush. Instead of explaining, she just shoots back a question: "Are you an idiot?" Annoyed, he demands to know where that came from, and Seline finally explains. Normally, nobody wants to train with someone they just lost to in a fight. But Ian, completely unfazed, just says it was only a match and they already made up. Hearing they reconciled only makes Seline more irritated. She asks if Seria has been following him around ever since their duel. Ian sighs, explaining that Seria just wanted to ask him something. He tells her she's not following him anymore, but Seline is still fuming. She demands to know why he's taking Seria's side so much. Then, without warning, Ian does something you and I probably didn't see coming. He grabs her face. She's completely stunned, stuttering as he leans in close and just sniffs her hair. He asks if she changed her perfume, and she stammers back that it's just her new face wash. Meanwhile, Ian is internally relieved. He successfully changed the subject. Seline then asks if he knows what the practical exercises are for the day. It's her first time participating, so she has no idea what to expect. He figures they'll probably explore the forest and learn about the local terrain. Seline says she hopes they don't run into any magical beasts. Ian stays quiet, he knows better. Under normal circumstances, they'd be safe, but the letter he received said otherwise. Thing is, only we know a magical beast attack is supposed to happen. A proper response could save lives, but there's a huge chance people could still die. He steels himself. He's the only one who knows what's coming, and he has to stop it. A moment later, Derek arrives, calling for everyone's attention. He has a few important points to go over before they start. He reminds them all about the student who was recently attacked by a magical beast. The attack happened right at the entrance to the forest. That beast came way too close to their territory, which means they could be in danger too. He warns everyone to stay on high alert. As Derek speaks, Ian notices Seria staring at him from the side, and he awkwardly looks away. Seeing this, Seria blushes, suddenly shy. Derek continues, explaining that the forest is so dense, it's hard to even swing a sword. He tells them to be constantly aware of their surroundings. Ian just stares at Derek's sword. He knows the beasts in this forest have the home field advantage. If they run into one, they're going to be at a serious disadvantage. But then Derek raises his sword, and you're going to want to see what happens next. He explains that if they were masters capable of materializing their own aura, it'd be a completely different story. Even if their sword's path was blocked, every single swing would slice through whatever stood in its way. But despite that, no matter how skilled you are, you can never just ignore the environment. Derek then points to a tree he completely tore apart with his own attacks, stressing that little details like this can mean the difference between victory and defeat. He drills into them the importance of keeping the right distance in a battle. For a swordsman, that's everything. And because of that, their training for the day will be a practical exercise using the entire forest. He then gives the order. Pair up, they're allowed to move freely during this training, however. After the recent incident, he warns them to stay away from the center of the forest. If they sense even a hint of danger, their only job is to escape and report back. Ian knows that if a horde of magical beasts really does appear like the letter said, sticking together is the only way to concentrate their strength and stand a chance. But trying to gather everyone without a real reason would just make him look insane. In the end, all he can really do is wait for a sign. He has to tell the professor the moment he spots any trace of a magical beast attack. But look, a fight could break out any second, so he obviously needs a partner. But before he can even finish that thought, an excited Seline calls his name. She asks if she's right to assume he's gonna team up with her. Without a word, he completely ignores her, grabs Seria, and says they're a team now. Ouch, Seline is left behind, absolutely fuming, a little while later deep in the woods. Ian is walking through the forest with Seria, his chosen partner. They're still inside the area Derek permitted them to be in, but so far, not a thing. Okay, something's not right here, and I think you and I can both feel it. Seria agrees, saying she hasn't sensed the presence of any beasts at all. As they continue on, Ian thinks to himself, there's no way someone as skilled as Seria at detecting these things would miss one. If something was here, she'd know. He suggests they take a quick break. But he reminds her to keep her guard up. Seria assures him it's no problem. As the sun starts to go down, they find a spot to rest in the middle of the forest. Seria stands in front of him, looking incredibly nervous. After a moment, she finally asks him why he chose her to be his partner. He casually replies, because we're friends. She's shocked and asks if he's the only one who thinks that. Then she hesitantly asks if she's supposed to offer him something in return. You know, for being his friend, Ian is completely confused. Stuttering, she suggests that when they get back to the dorms, she could give him some gold. Realizing she has no idea what he's talking about, Ian explains. Friendship isn't a transaction. If there's an exchange, it's not friendship, it's a business deal. He tells her that friends just talk to each other. Go on walks and spend time together without expecting anything back. They're people you can share things with. Things you couldn't tell anyone else. Seria then asks if she can ask a rude question now that they're officially friends. Ian agrees, curious about what she wants to know. And then she asks a question that, trust me, you are not ready for. Alright, let's unpack why they risked going this deep into the forest. It's because his friend was attacked here and he's been pushed to get revenge. But caught off guard, Ian admits he doesn't even know his own reasons. Seria presses him, asking why he's really doing all this. What's his motivation? Overwhelmed, he finally snaps, shouting that he already said he doesn't know. In that instant, memories of Emma flash through his mind, his hands trembling. He mutters that this isn't about revenge, he's just here to find the beasts. Seria looks at him, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness. She asks if this is what friendship is supposed to be. Is this what friends do? Still lost, Ian just says he doesn't really know for sure. He wonders if it's not something that just happens naturally. Then he flips the question, what would she do if a magical beast attacked him? Without a second of hesitation, Seria says she'd want to take that beast down. Ian nods, that's exactly it, that's how he feels right now. Emma was his friend, and that's the only reason he needs. In that moment, it's like the meaning of friendship finally clicks for Seria. Ian reassures her he's not an idiot, he won't just charge in recklessly. He has to make sure they're not walking into immediate danger first. And right on cue, a low growl echoes nearby, completely surprising him. He quickly asks Seria if she heard that. Confused, she says she's not sensing anything. But Ian signals for her to be completely quiet and focus. Her expression changes, her eyes go wide with shock as she whispers. She spotted them, multiple pairs of shining eyes, glowing in the darkness. They're hidden among the trees, Realizing how bad this is, Seria panics. If there are that many, all the other students in the forest are in danger. Seria grabs her sword, asking if they should attack, but Ian shuts that down. No, they're going to run. There's no reason for them to fight this battle. The smartest play is to get back and tell Derek what's coming. With a nod, he yells run, and they bolt back the way they came. A moment later, Ian can feel it. At least one of the beasts is chasing them. But with this much distance, they should be able to get away clean. If they can just keep this pace and warn Dirk, everything will be fine. But of course he stops dead when he hears Seria scream. Looking back, she's on the ground. He rushes to her side, asking if she's all right. She thinks she twisted her ankle. It's the same one she injured before during training, a classic worst-case scenario. She tells him she'll be fine once she gets a brace on it, but he has to go. She insists it's her fault, that he should just leave her behind. Otherwise, that magical beast is going to catch both of them. Ian never saw this coming. He can feel the beast closing the distance, fast. So he tells Seria to go on ahead, which leaves her completely stunned. She protests, saying this is her fault, but he cuts her off. Friends don't say that. And this right here, folks, is where a boy becomes a man. He runs forward alone. The forest around him goes completely silent. Every small animal has vanished. They instinctively sensed the predators coming and immediately went into hiding. He stops in the middle of the path. He knows there's no way out but through. He's not fighting these beasts head-on. No, stick with me, this guy's got a plan. He pulls out that potion Emma gave him, downs it all, and tosses the vial. Immediately, his presence begins to fade, but he can't help but grimace. That potion tastes absolutely disgusting every single time. But it'll let him get the drop on them, giving him the advantage he needs. Next, he rushes to a patch of mud, grabbing herbs and slathering it on. See, the potion hides his presence, but it does nothing for his scent. So he covers himself in soil and grass, masking it completely. Sticking his sword into a tree, he knows that if he's hidden, the beast can't find him. He climbs up into the branches, gets comfortable, and looks down. Now in the dead silent forest, all we can do is wait for the beast to arrive. A few minutes later, the first one shows up, and Ian immediately takes note. Ash-colored fur, jet-black eyes, huge fangs, and a body bigger than a grown man. It's radiating magic energy, confirming this thing is a demon beast. The creature looks confused, sniffing the air where the trail suddenly went cold. This is his chance. Ian leaps from the tree and lunges. It senses him way too late. By the time it reacts, his sword is there. He stabs directly into its head, but his aura isn't strong enough to pierce it. Realizing this, he puts his entire body weight behind the blade, forcing it deeper. With one final, desperate push, his sword drives straight through the beast's skull. It's dead, but even with the victory, he's shocked. It was unbelievably difficult to take down just a single one of them. He hides in a nearby bush, forcing himself to get his head back in the game. You and I both know this is no time to despair. If even one gets past him, Seria dies. He swears he'll stop them all, his gaze locked firmly on the road ahead. It isn't long before the other magical beasts start to arrive. Observing them, Ian sees they're wolf-like demons. They hunt in packs. He can only see one right now, but he can feel the presence of many more nearby. They're scattered all around him, still searching for their target. Based on their movements, he figures at least 5 of them are crawling this area. Seizing the opportunity, he bolts towards one of them and stabs it. The beast howls in pure agony before he can silence it completely. He tries to shove his sword deeper, but its hide is way too tough to get through. With no other option, he goes for a slash, but the beast dodges. And it counters hard, sinking its teeth deep into his hand. He's about to scream, but he chokes it back, knowing the others will swarm him. Clenching his jaw, he lifts his other hand, and this time he's holding an axe. He swings it down hard right onto the beast's skull. He raises the axe one more time and strikes, finally killing the second beast. Looking at the axe, he realizes how much more useful it is for close-quarters fighting. His senses feel much sharper too, ever since being possessed by that evil spirit. His reaction time is definitely better, just like when he fought Seria. He has to admit that evil spirit actually did something good for him. A new thought enters his mind. In this state, he could take down any number of them. Meanwhile, back at the starting point, Seline furiously throws her sword to the ground. screaming that Ian completely blew her off, so frustrated she starts stomping on her own sword, yelling about how dare he team up with that other woman instead of her. She keeps ranting, absolutely convinced that Ian and Sia are off on some romantic date in the woods. But just as she's losing it, pay attention, this is where the real story kicks off. Seria urgently calls out for Derek, who rushes over asking what went wrong. Seria, still trying to catch her breath, explains everything. A huge swarm of demon beasts, and Ian. He stayed behind alone to protect her after she was injured. For a second, Derek is completely stunned. But he snaps out of it fast, telling her he gets the situation. He orders her to stay put and wait right there as he bolts into the forest. He promises he'll save Ian. Seline and her friends just stand there panicking. Meanwhile, Sia tries to stand, but the pain from her leg is just too much. She collapses to her knees, clawing at the ground and just praying for Ian to make it out of there alive. Deep inside the forest, another beast appears. It finds 4 of its kin, all dead in the exact same position, and sniffs one of the bodies, totally unaware that Ian is hiding just behind it. The moment the beast raises its head to howl, Ian strikes, driving his sword straight through its throat, an instant kill. But before he can even breathe, he hears more howls in the distance and curses. Looking up, he sees 2 more beasts nearby, growling, ready to pounce. As they charge toward him, he stays perfectly calm, grips his axe, and mutters an insult at the wolves. Now this is where you'd think he's in trouble, right? The beasts land and start circling. They're running around him at unbelievable speeds. He knows their way faster than any regular wolf thanks to their magic, but still, at the end of the day, they're just beasts. Simple, predictable. He thought fighting a bunch of them at once would be tough, but if this is the best they've got, he can handle this. He times it perfectly, leaps, and slashes both beasts as they fly past him, hitting one with his sword and the other with his axe. Looking around, he shouts for any others to come out, basically declaring that he'll take them all on. A moment later, Ian stands in a pile of magical beast corpses. He thinks he's dealt with all of them, but you and I both know it's never that easy. He can feel one more nearby. And there it is, a lone beast lurking in the shadows just watching him. It's not getting any closer, making him wonder what its game is. Is it setting a trap? Waiting for him to mess up, he leans against a tree to catch his breath. He has to admit, for a beast, this thing is surprisingly clever. But at the same time, there's no real reason for him to fight it. Then he catches a scent on the wind. The second he recognizes it, his whole body tenses up. He's smelled this before, either in the alchemy classroom or Emma's workshop. And then it hits him. He starts trembling with rage as he realizes the truth. His eyes lock onto a small piece of fabric caught in the beast's mouth. And right there we all see it. It's a torn piece of Emma's robe. His grip on his sword tightens as he points it at the beast, his voice deadly serious. He says it's going to die right here, right now. The beast just watches him back. As if to mock him, it casually drops the cloth right onto his sword. Ian grits his teeth in pure rage as the beast steps forward with what looks like a sick, twisted smile. You and I can see it's basically laughing at him. It plans to cut him down just like he did to the others. But Ian swears on his life that's not how this fight is going to end. Unlike the other beasts that just charge in, this one is calculating, cautious. He realizes instantly this is no ordinary monster. It's a high-ranking beast. One wrong move and he's dead. He's got to feel it out first. Without warning, the beast lunges, appearing right in his face in a flash. Ian barely has time to blink before its claws tear across his chest. The force sends him flying backward, crashing hard onto the unforgiving ground. Pain explodes through his body. Cursing, he realizes the beast's speed is insane. He saw the attack coming, but his body just couldn't keep up in time. Now pay attention, because before he can even get up, it launches another high-speed attack. In a desperate move, he hurls his sword directly at its face. To his shock, the beast doesn't dodge. The blade slams into its mouth, knocking out teeth. Seizing the tiny opening, he leaps above it, gripping his axe for a downward swing. He strikes its face, but is stunned when the axe barely even leaves a scratch. This thing's body is way tougher than anything he could have imagined. It then twists in midair, pulling off a full somersault before lashing out with its claws. Luckily, Ian manages to block the blow with his axe. But the sheer power of the impact nearly shatters his arms as the monster lands perfectly. Ian is just frozen for a second, absolutely stunned. It's doing acrobatics mid-fight. Scoffing, he mutters that he should just sell it to a circus or something. Maybe beat it half to death, then hand it over to some performers. But despite the joke, he knows the situation is grim. The beast's teeth are cracked from biting his sword, so its bite attack is probably useless now. But even so, its other attacks are still a massive threat. Unfortunately for him, he is in way worse shape. He took the full brunt of that first hit. And if it launches another one of those super-fast strikes, he's not sure he can dodge. As if reading his mind, the beast suddenly dashes towards him again. This time, he just barely manages to shift his body aside, avoiding a direct hit. But before he can counterattack, the beast is already swinging its claws at him again. He ducks just in time, realizing it has him beat in speed and stamina. He swings his axe at the beast, knowing that the longer this drags on, the worse his odds become. The beast dodges without any effort, its grin widening. It's just toying with him. Ian knows he has to end this now while it's still playing. He sighs. It's not how he wanted to fight. It's reckless, it's dangerous. But at this point, he has no other choice. The beast then attacks Ian with some kind of breath skill, catching him completely off guard as it hits. He goes flying again, slamming hard into a tree and collapsing to the ground. The beast slowly approaches, but despite the agony, Ian remains perfectly still. Okay, I know what you're thinking, but he's not out, he's fully conscious. The beast, thinking it has won, walks closer to savor its victory. Ian knows exactly what's happening. It's not killing him right away, just like with Emma. The beast was toying with him, ready to rip his stomach open like its last victim. But just as it moved in for the kill, it let out a piercing scream. And just when you thought it was over, Ian drives his sword right into its throat. Using the last of his aura, he forces the blade in even deeper. Ian knew it all along, pretend to be weak, and the beast would lower its guard. Exposing every single one of its weak spots, he tells it straight. You came to tear my stomach open, not realizing yours was next. With one sharp pull, he yanks his sword free from its throat. Then with all his might, he slashes it right across the stomach. The beast howls in agony, blood pouring from the massive wound as it writhes. Ian just stands over it, schooling the monster on its fatal mistake. You should have killed your prey instantly instead of playing with your food. Especially a stronger one, he kicks its body, calling out its arrogance. That pride is exactly what led to its death. He raises his glowing sword. This is where we separate the hunters from the hunted. Remember my name. One final powerful slash cuts deep, ensuring its death once and for all. A final warning not to forget. Meanwhile, Derek is sprinting through the forest. His mind is racing, filled with nothing but thoughts of Ian. He's just desperately hoping that his friend is still alive. Then an explosion. Derek's sharp eyes spot the aftermath of a massive attack in the air. He immediately wonders if that was Ian's doing as he notices something else. Dead magical beasts are scattered everywhere. He senses two presences up ahead. One's a beast, and you and I both know who the other one is. Just then, Seline catches up to him, her face full of worry. She frantically asks where Ian is. Derek just scans the area. He tells her Ian isn't here, which sends her into a panic. But Derek just looks ahead, telling her they'll find out if they keep moving. Without hesitating, they push forward. Just minutes later, a voice calls out. They turn toward the sound and see him, Ian, sitting beside a massive corpse. The corpse of a magical beast. With a tired smile, Ian asks them, "Took you guys long enough?" Seline's eyes immediately fill with tears. The other students and Derek just stand there, frozen in absolute shock. Ian calls out to Derek, but before he can finish, his body gives out. He collapses from pure pain and exhaustion when he next wakes up. He finds himself in the temple. The saintess says Derek carried him here, right after he lost consciousness fighting that monstrous beast. She also lets him know it'll be a while before he's discharged. Still, he considers himself lucky to get away with just a hand injury. After everything, he's just relieved his gamble paid off in the end. He'd avenged Emma, but victory doesn't change the fact she's in a coma. He explains to Leto that according to Derek, the beast was just a juvenile. If it had been a full-grown adult, it never would have wasted time. It wouldn't have played with its prey, but Leto totally unimpressed. He just scoffs at the serious monologue, calling Ian a dumbass. I mean really, our guy is a patient. Ian tells him if he's here to fight, he can just live. Leto agreed but said Ian was basically a patient with a few screws loose. He sarcastically asked why on earth Ian would risk his life just to look cool for a girl. Calling him a lunatic, Ian shot back, demanding to know what he was even talking about. But you and I both know Leto was about to drop some hard truth bombs. He asks if Ian still has that potion Emma gave him, and Ian confirms it. He even admits it was thanks to her potion that he managed to kill the magical beast. Leto then questions why he didn't just give the potion to Seria in the first place. If he had just let her drink it and hid her up a tree, he could have gone for the professor. Instead of risking his life like an idiot, and yep, Leto says it straight to his face. There was absolutely no need for that kind of reckless hero act. For a second, Ian is just stunned, then it hits him. Leto is 100% right. Seeing his reaction, Leto just sighs and calls him a hopeless dumbass. He insists that from now on, if Ian has a plan, he better run it by him first. Then super casually, Leto mentions that Seria is completely smitten with Ian. Apparently he's seen her just loitering outside the temple more than a dozen times a day. Ian finds that strange, wondering why she wouldn't just come inside like a normal person. He figures she must be feeling guilty, but before he can think on it, Seline comes rushing in. And get ready, because the chaos level is about to crank up to 11. Without any hesitation, she throws her arms around him, just relieved that he's awake. Leto watches from the side, thinking to himself that he's basically invisible right now. Seline, still holding on tight, keeps saying how glad she is that he's okay. A moment later, though, she bites his hand and demands to know what they were talking about. Totally unfazed, Leto replies that Ian was just about to buy him a drink. And this is where it gets good, using the bounty reward for killing that magical beast. Seline lets go, completely confused now, asking what he means by a reward. Leto casually explains he heard they were offering 70 gold for it. Ian is floored, clutching his injured hand and yelling he never heard anything about a bounty. Leto just stands up, announces he's going to the bathroom. He tells them to decide on what to eat while he's gone. The second he leaves, Seline grabs Ian's injured hand and asks where they should go. She suggests some monster meat, which makes Ian scream out in pain. He yells that she's hurting him, but she's completely lost in her excitement. She proposes a restaurant in the city's dining district that specializes in magical beasts. She's heard they serve the absolute best drake meat. Ian, still in agony, shouts at her, asking if that's really what she should be talking about. Especially to someone who's injured. Hearing that, Seline's face suddenly drops. Ian immediately backtracks and apologizes, trying to explain he isn't mad at her. But before he can say more, she pulls him into another tight hug. With total sincerity, she admits she was really worried about him. She confesses she actually thought he had died. Ian just sighs, gently patting her head. He tries to reassure her, asking if she honestly thought he'd die that easily. As he's doing this, he realizes Seline has a surprisingly pleasant scent. Suddenly, Seline erupts, demanding to know why he keeps putting himself in danger all the time. Then she declares at the top of her lungs that she couldn't care less what happens to Seria. The only thing that matters to her is him, and trust me, that's a confession that changes everything. He couldn't just abandon someone in danger, but before he could even finish his sentence, bam. Seline smacks him, yelling that he's completely missing the point. She then declares with total confidence that he is the most important person in the world to her and nothing else even matters. She says it's always been that way, ever since they were just kids. Ian, completely blindsided, wonders what has gotten into Seline as she slowly starts crawling closer to him. And now, pay attention, she whispers that's why she wants him to take better care of himself. Ian starts sweating bullets, wondering if the shock of it all finally broke her brain. She reaches out, gently holding his hand before cupping his face. He freezes as she tells him to stay still. Just as she leans in for the kiss, a loud noise shatters the moment. They both scream in shock, whipping their heads toward the sound. Standing right there in the doorway, smirking, is Leto. He lets out a dramatic sigh, saying he feels just awful for interrupting such an important moment between his dear friend and a junior who's like a little sister to him. But he thought it was only right to let them know he was there too. Ian, still sweating, lets out a huge breath. That was way too close. He can't stop thinking about what he almost just did with someone he always saw as his little sister. Meanwhile, Seline is absolutely livid. She turns on Leto, furiously shouting at him. Without another word, she storms out, yelling at both of them to forget what just happened. Okay, I know what you're thinking, and yeah, this gets messy. Once Seline's gone, Leto points at Ian. He gives him this all-knowing look, warning him that if he plans to get any closer with Seria, he'd better watch out for Seline. The world of women, Leto says, is far more complicated than Ian could ever dream of. Ian just scratches his head in total confusion, having no idea what Leto is talking about. However, he realized later that he really should have taken that warning more seriously. Because of him, Seria and Seline's friendship was about to take a nosedive. The next day at the academy, the gossip mill was in full swing. Everyone was whispering about Seria. Rumors flew that the top swordsmanship student among the second years had actually run away from the magical beasts. Whispers echoed through the halls, saying the esteemed senior Seria was paired with a real talent. But she turned out to be all talk and no action. Seria just ignored them, knowing they weren't wrong. It was true she ran away, and it was also true that Ian had been the one to defeat the monsters. She couldn't deny it. She remembered how Ian never even needed to be in that fight. It was her mistake, her burden to bear. But Ian took the fight on himself and even told her not to blame herself in front of their friends. Her mind replays the image of Derek carrying Ian's unconscious body on his back, desperately screaming for an emergency response. She remembers Derek shouting for the temple to prepare for surgery immediately. Ian almost died because of her. She found herself wondering why Ian would risk his life for her. In the past, she wouldn't have had an answer. But now she felt like she was starting to understand. Ian was the first person she had ever felt truly comfortable around. No matter how harshly she spoke or how much she complained, Ian never got mad or pushed her away. It was like just being near him was enough, like it was okay for her to just be herself. And trust me, you and I just saw the moment her feelings began to change. She didn't want to lose him, and maybe, just maybe, she was finally starting to understand. Just a little how Ian must have felt when he stared down that monstrous beast. She didn't want to lose him, and he hadn't wanted to lose her. Because that's what friends do, they don't let each other die. At the temple, Seria enters. She hesitates at the door, peeking into Ian's room and seeing him on the bed. In that moment, it hits her. Ian was the very first friend she had ever made. Gathering her courage, she shyly walks over to his bedside. After a short pause, she stutters out a question, asking if he's been doing okay. Ian just tells her he's fine, that he barely feels any pain anymore. Hearing that, Seria lets out a quiet sigh of relief, glad that he's all right. He then admits he's happy she came, even though he's struggling with his studies. Leto gave him a book for the exam, and now he's asking if it's safe to assume that she hasn't changed her mind either. Seria looks down at the ground. Her gaze falls on the bag of gold she's carrying. After a beat, she asks if he's not angry. Ian's confused for a second, then realizes she's worried about what happened. He asks why he would be angry. There's absolutely nothing for him to be mad about. Seria's face lights up, and she asks excitedly if he's really not angry at all. And look, I know what you're thinking, and yeah, her emotions are all over the place. But Ian just tells her not to worry. It's only natural for friends to help each other. Hearing him say the word, friends, makes Seria break into a genuine smile. Ian then points to the bag she's holding, asking if it's another compensation payment. Seria immediately shakes her head, explaining it's the reward from Derek. The official prize money for defeating the magical beasts. She hands it over. She tells him Derek said to give it to him as soon as possible. Ian looks at the mountain of gold, his voice a little shaky as he asks, "Isn't this a little too much?" He's suspicious, asking if she added her own money. Seria just looks away, completely caught. He knows exactly what she did. With a sigh, Ian pushes the bag right back to her, saying there's no need. He insists that her life isn't something that can be bought with gold. He tells her to take the extra she added back, but as he does, their hands touch. Just for a second, her face goes red from the sudden, unexpected contact. And just when things were getting sweet, bam, Seline's voice cuts through the room. She bursts in with a cheerful good morning for Ian, but then she sees Seria. Her entire expression freezes. The mood shifts from sunny to stormy in an instant. Just as Seria is about to thank her, Seline deliberately shoves past her, ignoring her completely. She storms right over to Ian's bedside, leaving him stunned by her behavior. He immediately asks Seline why on earth she just did that. Meanwhile, Seria was knocked completely off balance, falling to her knees on the floor. She slowly gets up, dusts herself off, and with a calm smile says she'll be leaving. After all, she hasn't even finished her morning training yet. Seline is still fuming. She coldly calls Seria a rude, impudent brat, her voice sharp as a knife. Then she asks whose fault she thinks it is that Ian is in the hospital in the first place. You and I both know who she's blaming. Ian immediately shouts at Seline, telling her to stop. But Seline just brushes him off, telling him to forget about Seria. She's already focused on what they're going to eat once he's finally discharged. He suddenly remembers Leto's lecture about how the world of women is far more complicated than he could ever imagine, and for the first time he gets it. But still frustrated, Ian tells Seline she's completely missing the point. She just cuts him off, says the matter is settled, and that they are going out to eat as soon as he's free. Meanwhile, Seria walks from the temple, clutching a bag of gold so tight her knuckles are white. Her expression just pure unfiltered sadness. Not too far away, a student named Lupin spots Seria and sneers. Turning to his friends, he says she's even more of an eyesore than before. He suggests it's time to absolutely crush her. Lupin keeps complaining, saying he could barely stand how Derek pampered Seria just because she was the top student. But now she abandoned her friend and ran away all by herself. He yells that Seria is a total disgrace to the nobility. Then Lupin asks his friends if Seria has any weaknesses, insisting they need to destroy her completely. But one of his buddies, Teen, looks a little hesitant. He asks Lupin if he's really sure about this, reminding him that messing with Seria is a bad idea. One wrong move and they'll face retaliation. And just like that, a new player enters the game. A woman's voice cuts in, saying she just overheard a very interesting conversation. With a confident smile, she adds that if they have time, she can tell them a few things about Seria. Irritated, Lupin demands to know who the hell she is, screaming at her to mind her own business. But before he can go on, Teen quickly shuts him up and asks the woman what she knows. Still smiling, the woman pulls down her hood and calmly reveals her information is about Seria's birth. She then assures them they won't have to worry about any comeback from the Uranus family, because she can personally guarantee their safety. The next day, Ian goes to visit Emma. He stands by her bed, just staring, regret weighing him down completely. He thinks if only he'd believed the letter, none of this would have happened. He's already confirmed that 2 predictions from that letter came true, the attack on Emma and the magical beasts in the forest. And pay close attention here, because this is a massive turning point. It means the next prediction, a monster at the hunting festival, is probably real too. If the letter is calling it a monster, then it must be even stronger than the beasts he just fought. He clenches his fists. Knowing there's no way he can stop something like that on his own, he has no choice. He has to ask Derek for help. As he's standing there by Emma's bed, the Saintess calls out to him. Surprised, she asks if he came to visit Emma, thinking he'd already been discharged from care. Ian just says he stopped by for a moment before leaving. He then asks her about Emma's condition. The Saintess explains that with constant treatment, they can keep Emma alive. But alive doesn't mean recovered. As she starts the daily healing session, Ian remembers something she said. He reminds her that she once mentioned a valuable offering could cure Emma completely. And what kind of offering was that? Trust me, the answer to that question is about to change everything. The Saintess calmly explains the price. An object with incredibly high divine power, or strong magical energy, usually from the remains of a valuable magical beast. She adds, however, that materials like that are not only extremely rare, but it would be almost impossible for Emma's father to find one. You can feel Ian's desperation. He asks if a high-ranking magical beast would do. He even mentions hearing one is worth a whopping 70 gold. But the Saintess gives him the hard truth that wouldn't be enough. She estimates that maybe, just maybe, a full-grown adult of that species might work. Ian understands completely and thanks her for the direct explanation. Then he excuses himself, saying he needs to leave, and the Saintess nods. But watch this, she tells him she believes a miracle will happen for Emma very soon. She urges him to keep watching over her, and most importantly, to keep his faith. As Ian walks off, his mind goes right back to the letter and the monster it mentioned. Could that be the offering? He knows he can't handle anything stronger right now. Trust me, the beast he just killed on his own, that was his absolute limit. For now, he has only one single option. He needs to find his professor, Derek.
Parts that aren't quite right, so after that, when everything is ready, inserting the right images and syncing the audio together, then we proceed to export the video for publishing. So this is the process that I create a complete video. Therefore, I really hope that the YouTube support team reconsiders their decision. Check if there are any mistakes anywhere to help us return to the program earning money from YouTube. I sincerely thank you.